feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college ruled.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris. This is Dom. We're just going to get right into it. We're back on the gridiron. Who are we talking about?
We're talking about probably the 1990s best pass rusher and Hall of Famer Derrick Thomas.
Yeah, man. Sad story, but without
DT.
a doubt, one of the best defensive players of his era, man.
Oh, absolutely. Born January 1st, New Year's Day, 1967 in Miami, Florida. His mom, Edith, raised him because his father was in the military. His dad, Robert, was a captain and B-52 pilot in the Air Force. And he was in Vietnam flying a lot of dangerous missions.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, on one of these missions called Operation Linebacker, which is just disturbing irony, as we'll see later in Derrick's career, ends up going missing in action and later announced dead about a decade later.
Yes. So one of those where pretty sure his plane gets shot down and, you know.
And doesn't get the John McCain treatment.
That's right.
Should have been you, John McCain. Anyway, this led to Derrick, as we'll talk about later, always supporting the military and being excited about doing charity work for them and things of that nature.
Yes.
He had a rough childhood, though, as far as, growing up with a single mother in, poverty-stricken Miami. Got in a lot of trouble as a younger man.
Well, his mom said that they were breaking into houses, stealing pretty much what they could, and
Basically playing Grand Theft Auto Jr.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets arrested, and instead of being sent to juvenile or juvie or doing some sort of probation work, he ends up getting sent to a school.
Dade Marine Academy at age 14.
Yeah.
Kind of to turn around him and his lifestyle. And to the judge's credit, who recommended it, because he actually saw potential in Derrick to do great things. Derrick excelled there and was able to kind of turn his life in a positive direction because of this. He ended up going to South Miami High School, played tight end and linebacker, and was so good, he got a scholarship. Well, it's kind of a job.
I was going to say
student athletes.
There you go.
He got a scholarship to play at Alabama.
Yeah.
And
play linebacker. That was the thing is I saw in high school that he was two-way player, like a lot of these guys are, and then they were like, oh, he's obviously a dominant linebacker.
You can't teach the speed on the defensive side of the ball at that position. He goes to Alabama, and they are stacked with pass rushers. He plays with both Cornelius Bennett and Keith McCants, who was also top 10 picks.
Yeah.
They do a really great job there in Tuscaloosa. They 26-11 over his 3 seasons there. Win 2 Sun Bowls, too. And in his final season, 27.5 sacks.
I saw that. The coach goes, yeah, that's not a mistake. He literally had that in his final season. And coming out of college, this is what people were saying was he's going to immediately be an impact player.
He's going to be, the comparison was he could be the next Lawrence Taylor.
That was the huge comparison.
Without the Theismann leg shattering. Which is pretty damn impressive. But yeah, he had everything you could want at that position then and even now. Speed, could convert speed to power. His bend, the bend around the edge to beat these tackles, the way he could contort his body.
When they slow it up and you watch it, he's literally at a degree of an angle where they're just like, yeah, I can't get my hands on his body. It's insane. And then just snaps around him.
And to be 6'3", 255 and do that with your but that just defies physics. And he's coming out in a year, which we've talked about multiple times on this podcast, where there's a lot of good players.
Yes.
A lot of them.
This is just a super deep draft class that we see sometimes where you're just like, oh, you're going to be lucky if you're getting top 10.
Yeah, you're getting a quality player. This is the 1989 draft. I believe it's our episode 21, I think. And we've also talked about another member of this draft class, Troy Aikman, who went number 1. Funny story about the leading up to this. Derrick skipped the combine.
Yep.
He wanted to just do his pro day. And there's a great story because the Chiefs, and all the NFL is mad at him. So the Chiefs send their new defensive coordinator, because they have just hired Carl Peterson as their GM, Marty Schottenheimer as their head coach, and a young man named Bill Cowher as their defensive coordinator. And Cowher was instructed to give Derrick Thomas the workout from hell in the muggy heat of Tuscaloosa. and he just completely excels.
Well, they were pretty much like, I want you to break him. I want
And
this
couldn't
to
break
be.
him.
I want this to be him to be like, oh, I should have went to the combine. And literally, he was going so hard, he just goes to everybody. Was just like, yeah, I'm not going to get tired. And that's what they were saying, was just like, I can't run any more options because literally I'm out of like plays. And he's literally still going 100%. And this is something that the defensive coordinator said from Alabama. It's just like, yeah, there is no tiring him out.
Yeah.
He'll go all day and all night.
He said the only caveat is he needs to invest in an alarm clock, because one of the personality traits, and we'll get into it later, he was late for a lot of things. And he wasn't a good practice player. It was almost Bo Jackson or Herschel Walker-y, where it's just like, when it matters, I'm better than everyone else.
Well, and unfortunately, and this is what Marty, the head coach, said, was it was really frustrating because he would almost do this on purpose. He would show up to meetings a minute late and just kind of be like, I'm late.
I'm Derrick Thomas.
He would go 100% in practice for 6 seconds and then stop for the final 4 seconds or whatever. You could watch it, and literally he would just like break out this giant grin on his face. And the best quote from these coaches talking about him was, I hated him on Friday.
Yep.
I loved him on Sunday, and that's what really matters.
Because you didn't know what you were going to get.
No, but literally, like you were saying, he was just like, practice?
We're talking about practice.
We're talking about practice. And that's how he would practice. That's why it was so frustrating, because other guys were like playing for their spot, and he was just like, no, I'm going to sack the quarterback on Sunday. What else are we doing?
Yeah, much like another former Alabama standout football player. You never know what you're going to get.
No. Don't.
Roll Tide. Anyway, in this draft, as we've discussed, it's very, very top heavy. Troy Aikman goes number 1 to the Cowboys. Number 2, it's Tony Mandarich in one of the weirdest situations of all time. And the Lions take Barry Sanders at 3. The Chiefs are on the board. Deion Sanders doesn't want to play in Kansas City or Detroit because he'd ask for so much money they'd have to put him on layaway. But that's okay, because Kansas City can draft Eric Thomas. And they do, with the 4th overall pick. And they pair him with their previous year's first-round pick, also a great pass rusher during the 90s, even with his stupid Band-Aid nose, Neil Smith.
And this is what people were saying, was you couldn't get away from this Kansas City defense, and we'll see how effective they are. But like, it was Smith on the left and Thomas on the right.
Yeah. And
that's kind of what it was. If you watch these plays from back in the day, this Kansas City defense was really probably one of the best pass rushing defenses of this little, 90s.
Absolutely. And the two complemented each other so well as far as their skill sets, because you have Smith lining up against the tight ends and basically setting the edge and bull rushing. And then you have Thomas around the other, just speed freak, just absolutely crazy. And even though he never went to a Super Bowl, Marty Schottenheimer had a good track record of turning franchises around, and Derrick is a huge part of this. In 1989, he's the Defensive Rookie of the Year, 75 tackles, 10 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. And here's the thing. The Chiefs are coming out of that era post that Dolphins playoff game where they are dog shit for like 20 years.
Yeah, they are really bad.
Now they're actually good.
Yes.
But in this season, one thing I wanted to bring up, he brought back the strip sack. As far as in his arsenal, he wouldn't look to just sack the quarterback. He had these great moves where he was able, because, your wrist and your elbow are hinges. That's what he would go after more, and he was just an artist with that.
Well, the quote that I saw was, if you hit the wrist in a certain way, there's no way that the hand can hold the ball. And if you watch, because they have highlights of him doing these strips, and if you watch it, that's literally what he's going for. Not when you watch guys go for the ball, you're like, all right, that kind of makes sense. He is going for the wrist, just like, that's going to get the ball out. And
because he's so strong.
Yes, you're right. He really brought this back to be like, no. A sack is great, but I'm going for both.
I'm going for a turnover right now.
And he was one of the best at this. Like, it's really impressive because you were saying, like, guys really weren't doing it at this time.
No, so after 89, as a rookie, he makes the first of 9 straight Pro Bowls.
Yep.
That's just amazing. In 1990, he's named first team All-Pro, 63 tackles, 6 forced fumbles, and 20 sacks. And he had a game this year where he set an NFL record with how many, Chris?
So he has 7 sacks. I wanted to bring this up. The first 2 rush plays that he had in this game, he had 2 sacks.
Yeah.
This is against the Seattle Seahawks.
Week 10 of the 1990 season.
And second half, he has 5 more sacks, which it has to be absolutely demoralizing, but this, I feel like, is a theme in this Kansas City.
Well, when you're playing Marty Ball on offense, sometimes it gets you in trouble. And Derrick in this game should have had 8 sacks because they're up 16-10 in the closing seconds at about the 40-yard line. And Dave Craig drops back to pass, and Derrick has him dead to rights, misses him. Craig throws up a prayer, and it's caught in the end zone for a touchdown as time expires.
It's pretty brutal, but to think that the defense was dominating that much and the offense only got only got 16 points.
And one of the touchdowns was a Derrick Thomas strip sack
Yes.
that Dan Saliamua returned for a touchdown. So apparently the offense just didn't give a shit.
That's what I mean. So this is the theme of this Kansas City team.
Oh,
But
we're going to get further down this hello darkness, my old friend rabbit hole for this franchise.
he even said he was just like this, the 7 sacks were great. That was a great game. But like, I always think about the 8th one that I missed. And if you watch it, he really had him game done. And
Yeah.
that's what sucks is like literally that's it right there. And it could have been
If your entire defense gets 7 sacks in a game, there's a pretty good chance you're going to win it going away. One guy doing it?
well, somebody said this too. They were like, literally, that's some guy's career.
Yeah.
7 sacks is just like, no, I can hang my hat on that. That was Derrick Thomas in one game.
1991, 79 tackles, 13.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. They end up beating the Raiders in the playoffs, but they lose in the divisional round to the Bills in what will become, as we've been talking about, it remained the only postseason win of his career.
The Raiders. And then they meet up with the Bills. And I wanted to ask you about this because this was, I imagine, because let's go over what happened. So in the end of the first half, Montana goes down with a concussion.
No. This is 2 years later.
Oh, this is
in
2 years
91,
later.
they played the
You're
Bills.
right.
Yeah,
You're right. Okay.
So they'll meet again in Buffalo. They get kind of curb stomped in 91.
Okay.
And Buffalo, I think, had 13 or 14 wins that year.
Yeah. So they were a really good team.
Yeah, 92. He was actually named because of the charity work he did. I didn't want to bring this up. He had a foundation called Third and Long, which taught literacy to kind of underprivileged kids. As I said, he did a lot of charity work for the military, and George H.W. Bush named him one of his 1,000 points of light for that, which I thought was pretty cool.
Well, he immediately put a lot of money into this Third and Long program to help kids essentially from like his home area to better their lives because he saw the importance of that.
If you're not gonna do it, Derrick Thomas is gonna do it.
Gonna do it.
Release the locust boy! Sorry.
And I thought it was interesting. He actually teamed up with the judge that sentenced or let him go to that military academy or whatever it was.
The not juvenile hall, the Miami-Dade Marine Academy.
Yes. And I thought because he went back and saw how important this is, and he really was one of the biggest, charity work guys in the NFL.
He spread himself really thin. And in fact, in 93, he was named NFL Man of the Year, which is a very prestigious award for what he did off the field. 92, though, 14.5 sacks, 8 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and a touchdown. This guy kind of is your offense at this juncture. Because I think they're dealing with some old man Steve DeBerg and maybe Dave Craig is there yet. I'm not quite sure, but it's not. The quarterback position isn't settled, and this is a recurring theme basically up until Patrick Mahomes. 93, 8 sacks and a touchdown. This is the playoffs.
This is when they meet the Bills again.
So in the wild card round, they shatter my soul by making a Montana comeback and beating the Steelers on a field goal in overtime. Why couldn't you block on punt team? Why? Albert Lewis was the best punt blocker of the era. Why are there not 4 fucking guys on him? So they win 27-24. Try and block that out. And then the following week is one of the best playoff games of the 90s, in my opinion. That isn't like a Super Bowl or anything. They go into the Astrodome. They play a team which had previously beat them this year, though they beat them in the Astrodome without Montana. Dave Craig was his backup.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He had played in that game, so they roll into Houston. And for those of you who don't know about this 93 Houston team, we could probably do an episode on them. They started 1-4 and won 11 straight games to close out the 93 season. People were talking about an all-Texas Super Bowl. Like, if anyone's going to beat Buffalo, it's probably going to be Houston. And they get down in the game, and there's Keith Cash makes a touchdown catch, throws the ball at a poster of Buddy Ryan, and it just completely changes the momentum of the game.
Yes.
And the pass rush starts heating up in the second half, and they're actually getting to Warren Moon. And Willie Davis has a long touchdown catch from Montana. And then Marcus Allen, towards the end of the game, just his vision was unbelievable throughout his entire career, but he basically ices the game to go up by 8 points because there's no 2-point conversion.
Yes.
And on the final drive, Derrick harasses Moon enough on the final play from scrimmage to incomplete pass on 4th down, and they pull off a huge upset win. And everyone's excited because Derrick's like, oh my God, this could be my chance. And then they go to Buffalo and kick us off with the game you were talking about before.
Well, and this is the thing that kind of is with the theme of this Chiefs team is they go into the Bills, and Montana's the quarterback, obviously, but he gets knocked out in the first concussion. It's a pretty bad concussion, especially even for the era.
Yeah.
I feel like they're pulling him out for a concussion. But then the second half comes around, and the Bills pretty much have a running offense.
So they see the deficiency, and one of the deficiencies people would always knock Thomas on was he was always an up-the-field player, meaning he was going for the sack even on running downs almost. Yes. And if you're a smart play caller and offensive coordinator, you will run a lot of screens, you will run a lot of draws because of the space created. And they had one of the best running backs of all time at doing those things on their team in Thurman Thomas. And he ate them alive that day. It was, Kelly played well, but it was Thurman Thomas's game that day.
So they pretty much benched Thomas for the second half.
Because they needed run stuffers. They had no solution that day for Thurman Thomas.
And this was what they were saying was it literally, because they put their run defense in, and it kind of just didn't matter. That's how much better the Bills essentially were, because they were saying, how do you take out your best defensive player? But it was he was really had these glaring holes that they just kept exploiting.
Oh, great. You're 5 yards up the field. That means there's an entire gap between the left tackle and guard.
Yep.
And if it's a delay and he thinks it's going to be a pass or it's going to be a draw, it's just a recipe for disaster if the second level isn't ready for it. And they lose 30-13 and roll into 94. Still has a great year, 71 tackles, 11 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 fumble recoveries. See, that's the thing about the Chiefs of this era, man. They are always the bridesmaid and never the bride.
Well, I hate to say it, but the organization really was kind of letting him down with this, because I feel like the defense was there. Marty was probably one of the better defensive head coaches.
Oh, yeah.
And then
saw a lot of this with his old defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh during this freaking era.
And then we just kind of see they just really can't put it together on a postseason level.
Yeah, and 94, they're the 6th seed. They go to Miami in the playoffs, but they lose at the last second to Dan Marino. Because when you have Dan Marino, you don't need a former Dolphins kicker named Ray Finkel.
That's true. It's a different year. That's all I'm saying.
That's what I mean. It's like someone held the laces out.
Yes,
right?
come on.
95, though, is a great year. This team is really good. I remember watching them. They go 13-3 in the regular season. You're thinking of all of the Chiefs teams that should have done it. It should have been this one. They run away with the AFC West that year. 55 tackles, 8 sacks. So it's kind of a down year for him, but he's healthy entering the playoffs. And they draw the Colts. And this is a very scrappy Colts team. They had won the previous week in San Diego, but they had lost their top 2 running backs in the game.
Oh, okay.
So Marshall Faulk is out. They're relying on Lamont Warren and Zach Crockett. And Crockett had like an incredible playoff game against San Diego. But they roll in, and everyone's expecting the Chiefs as heavy favorites. Like, everyone's just assuming this is a Colts team that was picking number 2 overall in 1994 to kind of set the stage. And everyone thinks the Chiefs are going to roll away with it, and then they'll play the winner of Pittsburgh-Buffalo the next week at Arrowhead. Unfortunately, not only does the offense not show up in this game, the special teams completely shits the bed.
And this is what sucks with Kansas City is it is such a bad run of events. Like, literally the kicker misses
4 field goals.
4 field goals and 1 at the end to win.
To tie.
To tie.
Send it
to
to
tie.
overtime.
Okay, yeah, to tie.
Because Indianapolis just hangs around the entire game. You can tell who the better team is, but if you can't execute on special teams, and you're replacing Steve Bono with Rich Gannon in like the 4th quarter to try and get you points, you have obviously fucked up. Like, just game planning wise, execution wise, and oh my God, how depressing would that be to lose 10-7, to give up 10 points as a defense and just lose?
And this is the recurring theme, though. They literally can't get their shit together on the offensive side, and this is when
it's crushing his soul.
This is when he starts to talk about how much of a bummer it is, because he feels like the franchise isn't putting the enough into what should be, like really cultivating a better offense.
You don't need your offense to be dominant, but Jesus Christ, don't be incompetent.
You need it to make at least 20 points on a game like this. That's what's kind of ridiculous. And I heard him say this. He was just like, next year we're coming back with a different kicker. If you're that kicker, you feel like shit, but at the same time, you're like, yeah, he's gone.
I did miss 4.
Yes.
Ooh,
it's brutal.
Not my day. And they will cut your ass if you're a kicker. Good thing he didn't assume the name of a missing hiker, though.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Try and get back at the Chiefs. 96, they missed the postseason. They had kind of a late season collapse, but he still had 13 sacks and 4 forced fumbles. And then 97, if you thought 95 was bad, oh boy, you get a sequel. You get a sequel in 97 of good Derrick Thomas play and just crippling depression. They get the number 1 seed again. They go 13-3. They edge out Denver, who was the odds-on favorite actually that year. Denver finished 12-4 and had to settle for the wild card. Thomas has 9.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and they get the number 1 seed again at Arrowhead, and they unfortunately draw the Broncos. And who's playing for the Broncos now? Neil Smith.
And this was his first year. So in the offseason, Neil Smith switches over to Denver.
Which you didn't see a lot of back in those days.
No, especially in division. And
here's the thing about Neil, though, I will say. The year before, Denver finished 13-3. They were on the cusp. They just had that horrendous loss to Jacksonville in the divisional round, much like the Chiefs with the Colts. But Neil saw what they were building, and he probably knew what on offense was going to happen in Kansas City, and he was probably like, I'm ring chasing now, and I don't fault him for that.
I was going to say, Neil Smith ends up getting 2 rings, and we see in this game, Denver ends up beating Kansas City.
So this game is kind of funny. I was obviously rooting for Kansas City living in Denver at the time because Pittsburgh had won the previous day. And my mom's like, oh, don't you want the Broncos to win so the Steelers can have home field for the championship game? I'm like, no, keep them out. I hate John Elway. Keep them out. And then in this game, there's Denver's offensive linemen, the cut blocking kings, as I like to call them. They rub Vaseline all over their jerseys. Do you know that?
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, there was a big controversy with that in this game, and then the refs completely blew a Tony Gonzalez touchdown catch where his feet were in. But again, now Elvis Gerbach is piloting this offense, and they managed 10 points, which would have been okay in 95, but Denver scores 14. And there's a lot of questionable play calls. There was a fake field goal that didn't work for Kansas City in this game. It was just really bizarre. And Derrick Thomas goes home again, a loser in the playoffs.
And this is what they would keep saying is the last couple of years, it's kind of out of character for him to straight up be talking shit on essentially the part of the team that's not working
Yeah.
and them not really fixing it. It's really shitty. And then
I think Neil getting 2 in a row with Denver in 97 and 98 had to just eat at his soul.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. 98, he has 12 sacks. He had 6 in the first game against the Raiders. I remember watching that on Sunday Night Football going like, oh, poor Jeff George.
Well, it's crazy to think that he had 7 in one game and 6 in another. Like, his pass rushing ability was so above everybody else in this era. Like you were saying, the only person that he was really compared to was Lawrence Taylor. And I saw this quote. He said, "LT's time is over.
Yeah.
It's DT time."
The 90s belong to DT.
Yeah.
But the Chiefs bottom out. They finished 7-9. There was a Monday Night Football incident where they're playing the Broncos. Apparently, what happened as we talked.
I want to hear it from you. Here we go.
As we talked in our Sterling Sharp episode, Sterling Sharp wasn't much of a talker. He was more of a, I'm going to dominate your ass and then go home and think about football. His brother Shannon, on the other hand, massive shit talker and enormous asshole.
Massive shit talker. And people said he was like one of the biggest ever in football. Like literally.
I wonder if Sterling ever was just like, you can tone it down sometimes.
Oh, I'm
right?
sure. I'm
Like,
sure. I'm going to tell Mama you said that.
Yeah, exactly. She's going to make you work in the chicken coop.
Yep.
But no, so in this Monday Night Football game, what happens? Apparently, Shannon, for whatever reason, found out the phone number to Derrick's girlfriend. This is pre-Google, by the way.
And I was going to say, this is like home phone number. This isn't like her cell phone. This is like literally.
Yeah.
And then he goes, this is what allegedly happened.
It had to have, because Derrick freaked out in this game.
He
I think
goes
he had like
almost
3 personal fouls.
He almost goes play by play. He's listing it one number at a time. He's like, "Hey, playa, that's 6. All right, we'll go into the next one. That's that's 2." And then, like you said, he literally flips out. He does like a.
And he was the calmest guy on the field.
Yes.
That's the other. It was so out of character. And that's why I believe it. Because if he said any other player did it, it was like, okay, maybe not. But Shannon Sharp would do something like this.
They end up suspending him for a game and from any football facilities for a week. And it
was a black eye on the organization,
yes.
too. And I think at the end of the season, Marty had enough and he up and quit.
I was going to say, Marty, and this is kind of one of the sadder quotes, he said, "That was more embarrassing to me than the playoff loss." And you're just like, damn, that's brutal. But that's the way he felt. And you're right. He quit at the end of the season. And
Derrick comes back, though. In 99, they go 9-7, 7 sacks. He gets his first career pick, which was good.
I loved that.
That was all the players were
so
cheering
weird
for him. Yeah, but like
he's not a drop back kind of guy.
He's not TJ Watt, where he can play in the flat and actually run with tight ends. That's not his job.
No.
You pay him to do one thing. And in the Week 17, they play the Raiders. He commits a horrible penalty to keep him alive by running into the kicker.
This is horrible.
And the Raiders end up winning 41-38 in overtime. But the worst part about this loss is Kansas City's out of the playoffs.
Yep.
So Derrick has gone 11 seasons and won 1 playoff game. But he's still a viable player. And you're thinking, okay, maybe in 2000, the Chiefs can kind of solve their quarterback situation. And unfortunately,
he goes to so he still wants to participate.
He still wants to play.
So he still wants to go to the NFC Championship game and watch.
Yeah, because it's across the state in St. Louis, because the Rams are playing the Buccaneers. And on January 23rd, he's late. He's late because they're going to take a plane from Kansas City to St. Louis. They'll go to the game, turn right back around. Unfortunately for Derrick, and this is like mostly Kansas City play. Every time I watch them in the playoffs, it's always this crappy weather. It's like an ice storm, essentially, just freezing cold. And I guess they had a really bad one in the day leading up. He's going 70 miles an hour in a 99 Chevy Suburban on icy roads, and crashes his car
and flips it
with 2 passengers in it. Derrick and one of the other passengers were not wearing seatbelts. The one not wearing a seatbelt was murdered instantly. The guy who was wearing a seatbelt walked away without any injuries.
And Derrick ends up becoming paralyzed from the chest down.
Yeah, it was completely tragic that it happened, and they send him down to Miami.
I want to say this, though, about the ice storm, which I found so ridiculous. 11 people died in car accidents in this ice storm today. His friend being one of them, and his friend with the seatbelt being a guy who ended up walking away without any injuries. Derrick ended up getting paralyzed. You're right. They sent him down to Miami, and he's still super optimistic in this.
I know Cowher met with him, and Cowher said Derrick said he wanted to play for him in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like he really thought he could walk again and play football again.
I was going to say, and Cowher said something that was so sad. He was just like, I knew his spine was severed, and there's no coming back from that.
He's known the guy for basically over a decade and developed a great relationship with him, and to watch him in that feeble state has to be just horrendous. He's making progress doing physical therapy, but February 8th, 2000, he was being transferred to physical therapy, and he had a blood clot in his legs, and it spread to his lungs and killed him. And just horrible. Just freaking
super
horrible.
sad.
To see someone's life end like that when their entire, being is essentially being an athletic badass, and to go out in such a feeble state, it's tragic.
I want to say this. He ended up having 7 kids with 5 different women. And something that I found so sad was his dad died at an early age. And he was always saying, because they said he was a great dad, even though he had so many kids.
Spread himself thin for other kids and his own kids. Like he actually made a conscious effort despite
to be a good father to those kids.
Maybe not so good at wrapping it up, but also actually stepping up.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that's what I think is always sad, is that he ends up leaving all these kids, essentially at the age that he was without a dad.
Yeah, just tragic.
And his third and long, all of his charity work, all of the stuff that he did for Kansas City, and just it's one of the saddest stories. Like you were saying, he was still in his prime.
He could have played another 3 to 4 years at a high level.
Yes.
I would have to imagine. I mean, and when you look at his stats, obviously he's an NFL Hall of Famer.
Yes.
9-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro, Defensive Rookie of the Year, twice led the league in forced fumbles, once in sacked, most Man of the Year in 93, 95 Whizzer White Man of the Year, all-decade 1990s, obviously. 126 and a half sacks in 11 seasons. That's unbelievable. That's ridiculous.
He had 7 double-digit sack seasons. It's insane. And just the 2 games, one of them with 7 sacks, the other one was 6. Fortunately, that one should have been 8 sacks.
I know, right?
It's a bummer. But
Dave Craig and your small, carny hands because of all your fumbles smell like cabbage. Circus folk.
Well, let me say this. Go to a Chiefs game today, and you'll still see people wearing 58. They retired his jersey number. That'll always be his. They made the Chiefs Man of the Year, their Player of the Year, the Thomas Trophy. Like, he literally is a Kansas City Chief forever.
He's probably the most important Kansas City Chief post that Dolphins playoff game until probably Patty Mahomes.
Yeah.
I would say that. And I mean, there's probably little argument you could make.
No, yeah.
So, Derrick Thomas, one of the best of his era, taken away far too soon. Thank you.